episode 62. You are listening to the new Glam Gal Podcast, the podcast where style meets confidence. Conquer the frustration of trying on clothes and learn to dress and love the body you are in. There are no size or weight requirements here. I'm your host, Miss J. Join me, won't you? Hey, Glam Gals. Welcome back to the podcast. We are going to talk about having the gift of gab. Some people think that you are just naturally born with the gift of gab. You are able to converse with others naturally without coming across as awkward. Some people have natural charisma. So if you are not one of those people who you think are naturally gifted, like you're born with this special magical quality, I want to let you know that most people have to cultivate this quality. And even if you are yourself introverted or you feel yourself to be naturally shy, you are not exempt from being a good conversationalist. It's not outside of the realm of possibility for you to be someone who's charismatic, to have a certain je ne sais quoi when you encounter other humans. I was talking to a gal at a networking cocktail party that my firm was having. And this is a fellow attorney. And she was saying to me how nervous she is at networking events, that she feels very awkward, that she feels strange. And I asked her about it because my coach hat immediately came on. And I asked her to tell me what she was thinking when she went into these situations. And we came to the conclusion through a little bit of coaching that she felt like she had to become a different person in order to be a natural conversationalist, that she would have to put on this totally different persona in order to network well or to mingle with clients well. And I wanted to let her know, and I hope this came across to her, but I thought maybe it was time to do a podcast episode on this topic. You will be a better conversationalist when you realize you just need to be yourself, that you don't need to be creepy and put on this other persona and come across as really awkward and creepy. You could still be your naturally shy self and be able to converse well. You could still be your naturally goofy self if that's who you are and still be able to converse well. Because conversation is a courtesy. Let me say that again. Conversation is a courtesy. In one of the etiquette books I'm reading from 1951, it's Elsa Maxwell's etiquette book. She has a whole chapter dedicated to this, and that is actually the title of the chapter. Conversation is courtesy. And I really love that idea because I think sometimes women think that in order to be stylish, they have to be naturally extroverted. In order to be confident, they have to have this natural charisma, this natural confidence. And I want to let you know that this is something to be cultivated, and it all starts with how you're thinking about it. Now, in the example of the attorney I was telling you about, she thought she had to take on a whole different persona, a different personality, different mannerisms, and really just be a different person in order to be a good conversationalist. And that's simply not true, and I want to let you know the same thing. So what is required to be a good conversationalist? If you don't have that, whatever natural magic potion is, and it's something you have to cultivate, well, how do you do that? And how do you do that in a stylish way while still being true to yourself? The first thing you must realize is that conversation is a courtesy, which means it's about the other people. Being a good conversationalist is actually not about you at all. And when you get into your head and you start being overly aware of where your hands are, how you're standing, what you're doing with your face or your teeth or your hair, and the focus is on you, think of how weird and creepy you come across to the other person. It's like sitting next to someone and noticing that there is a mirror where that person can see themselves in the mirror. Have you ever seen this phenomenon? And the person can't seem to take their eyes off themselves, even though they're trying to concentrate on you. Their eyes keep darting to the mirror where they can see themselves. Or have you seen the person who keeps touching their phone and looking at their phone and turning on their phone and putting their phone away. They become overly involved in something else. Well, the same weird body language and awkwardness comes across when you start obsessing about yourself. But if we think of conversation as a courtesy, then it becomes about the other person. And then we can open ourselves up to doing things that good conversationalists do. Which brings me to my second point. A good conversationalist listens. They don't listen for the point of thinking of something clever to say in their head. They don't listen so that they're merely hearing the words pass through them, but they're not actually absorbing any of the information coming their way. They're really not formulating anything in their head while they're listening. They're truly listening. They're taking in information because they're interested in this other person. They're interested in what the other person is saying. They're more interested in the other person than themselves. And when you go into a conversation with the idea that this is a courtesy and you're actually listening, you'll be able to do the third point very well. You'll be able to be interested as opposed to worrying about being interesting. And I think this is where a lot of gals get caught up. They're so worried about being clever or witty or not coming across as bitchy or overly aggressive because, we have to play those social mores very finely in the middle. We can't be too loud. We can't be too aggressive. We can't be too much. But then we also can't be too docile or too weak or too quiet, or we'll never get a word in edgewise or a seat at the table where the boys' club is. So it's so important that we walk this middle line. And if we're so worried about how we're presenting in that middle ground, then conversation as a courtesy goes out the window. We're not actively listening. And then we're overly consumed with being interesting and witty and clever and funny. I've noticed a lot of gals get really wrapped up in being self-deprecating. This is something I find myself doing oftentimes, and I have to reel it back in. I don't need to be the most clever, the most funny. I don't need to be the most self-deprecating, and I don't need to be the most witty, particularly in front of my male counterparts at work. But if I go into a conversation as a courtesy, I'm listening without the intent of formulating something clever. Then, 3, I can be more interested than worrying about being interesting. I could just allow myself to be present. If I'm naturally a shy person, I could just be shy and still have an amazing conversation with one person. If I'm an extrovert, I can still be part of a large crowd conversing and actually contributing to the conversation in a meaningful way that allows the conversation to continue to flow forward, as opposed to trying to one-up someone with an anecdote that doesn't necessarily fit, but I'm trying to squeeze it in because I'm worried about being interesting. Now, I'm sure you've encountered these people in a group setting. They're always the one that has the one-up story. Well, let me tell you what happened to me. It was 10 times worse, 10 times more awful. Or the opposite. Let me tell you what happened to me. It was amazing. It was wonderful. Oh my God, you should have been there. We encounter these people because they're always worrying about formulating something in their head because they're overly concerned with being interesting rather than being interested. So I want to leave you with something that Elsa Maxwell said in her chapter, Conversation is Courtesy, where she says, it's important that when you encounter another person to have your mind as well as your hand outstretched. And that's such a beautiful visual. So next time you encounter an event where you have to talk to strangers or you have to be charming and conversational, even if it's just to one person, I want you to pull up that visual in your head. I'm going to have my mind as well as my hand outstretched. I'm going to do this in a courteous manner because conversation is courtesy. I'm going to listen without trying to formulate a response. I'm going to be more concerned with being interested than worrying about being interesting. Now think of how stylish and smooth that conversation will go and how you'll present yourself rather than the awkward, creepy person who's concerned with how to hold their hands. All right, if you struggle with this and you need some help, feel free to reach out at coach@judithgaton.com. All right, let's get it, Glam Gals. Miss J out.